Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friday Feelings, where we turn emotions into power, vulnerability into strength, and remind you to feel everything, fear nothing, and transform your life. I'm your host, Jenelle Friday, and today's episode is very special because of our guest speaker. So, today we're talking about harnessing the unexpected power of awe. And I know that sounds a little bit weird from an emotional intelligence perspective, but my guest today, Mr. Marc Wendt, is someone that I have come to deeply admire and respect for his background, for the way that he communicates, why he's passionate about the things that he covers in today's episode. And so I'm just really thrilled to kind of kick us off. So, Marc, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Friday Feelings.
Thanks for having me, Janelle. And the feeling is mutual. And I love your audience. Like what I've seen from LinkedIn and the way that people respond to you, it's right up my alley. I really appreciate this part of humanity, and I'm really grateful to be here.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely happy to have you. So, a little bit of background, Marc and I connected over emotional intelligence things. We got in a conversation and realized not only do we share so many values in common, but Marc comes to the table with a little bit more flavor than I do because of his varied background. And so, Marc, I would love for you to just share with our audience. Tell us a little bit about you, right? What are you focused on? How did you get to the place in your professional and adult life where emotional intelligence and really connecting on a human to human level has become so important to you?
Thank you. Most powerfully, as a young man, I was raised by a single mother. And the context of my upbringing is a time in American history where the first wave of feminism was part of our culture in the late 60s and early 70s. And so as a boy, it was very much part of my upbringing that it's okay for men to have feelings. That was a big part of how I was raised.
Mm.
And as a result of that, I acquired all kinds of skills in communication from my parents who ran workshops. And EQ was literally a part of my life since I was a boy. And it got
Wow.
to be a little tricky as I grew through high school and college and became more integrated in less of the progressive society with more of a wide array of people. And men that I came across were more stoic. And this whole idea of men who have feelings wasn't really true in my experience. And so I
Mm.
grappled with that throughout my adult life and in my various careers. And when I got to a transition point in my life, where both my job and my marriage were ending. A 20-year marriage and a 21-year job were ending. And I had a choice at that moment whether to just push it off on circumstances and blame my wife for her shortcomings. But what I did was I got super curious about why it had happened and how I had contributed to that. Now, the job
Mm.
was a different thing. It wasn't a performance issue. It was just the company transitioned. And so I didn't really want to be part of the new team when they offered a move, move over here and work for us over here. I was like, I'm going to do something different. But with my investigation of my own contributions to how my relationship had failed, I got into men's work and I started doing deep dives on how to be more of a powerful masculine leader without losing my ability to be intuitive, emotionally awake, and to communicate in a powerful way that involves EQ. And along the way, one of the teachers said to me, Marc, you should study coaching. You have an innate capacity. And so I've done multiple certifications in the coaching field, including work in decolonizing my mind, anti-racism work, and pro-feminism work, and beyond feminism, women's freedom work. And this informs a lot of how I run my coaching business. But I've really become focused in this idea of what's leadership? What do men and women do that really moves people forward in their organizations and in their family life? And that gets me out of bed every morning, excited and curious, like I am right now. I'm excited and curious about what's going to happen in this conversation. And I have lots and lots of value to deliver. So be sure to stick around for the whole thing because I'm going to do some things at the end that will help you personally practice more of this access to the greater aspects of yourself.
I love that. So let's focus on our topic today, harnessing the unexpected power of awe. When we originally spoke and I sent you a Excel spreadsheet with all of the topics that I had kind of come up with, you picked this one. So let's first talk about when I say the power of awe, Marc, to you, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's important first to kind of define what awe means.
Yeah.
So let's start there. I don't mean ah, and I don't mean awe.
Oh.
We're talking about this kind of exalted feeling, this feeling of connectedness and reverence for the magic of life.
Mm,
And it's a profound emotional response to something vast, inspiring, and beyond our current understanding often. And psychologists define awe as a state of wonder and amazement that expands perception, shifts perspective, and elicits a sense of connection to something larger than the self. It's both humbling and uplifting, and capable of evoking feelings of mystery, reverence, and even smallness in the face of greatness. Now,
mm,
neuroscientifically, awe engages the brain's default mode network, momentarily quieting self focus and increasing feelings of unity, connectivity, creativity, and emotional resilience. Boom, there it
love
is.
that. So, okay, so that was a lot, right? What I want to do is give me an example, Marc, of the last time you felt in awe, and maybe it
Yeah.
caught you off guard. Maybe it was surprising that that's how you felt in that moment.
So it's interesting because the physiological component is so critical. One of the pieces of awe is that it's not just an intellectual or emotional experience, it's a sensational experience. People
Mm,
describe it as getting tingles in their body, on the top of their head, or like an open expansiveness in their chest. And
mm,
sometimes we catch our breath, right?
yeah, for
So for
sure.
me, one of the precursors most recently was that I've been eating a lot less. Now, this is a medical issue, but fasting is a really powerful way to access this. And so, when the body gets to this place of stasis around hunger, meaning past the first sort of 4 hours of hunger, different hormones are secreted. And as a result of our hunter gatherer instincts, we have access to greater sensations. Our eyes, our ears, our skin is much more reaching out to receive the world. And
Mm,
so, one of the things that's a corollary to this in terms of how we often experience awe is hunger and being
mm,
open. And so, for me, I was recovering and not eating a lot, and I was in a state where my energy was really not super high. My stamina was not super high. But in the morning, I got up and the winter had sort of abated, the rain had given way, and there were clouds, and this beautiful sun came through the clouds and illuminated all of the different pieces of my garden. And I had this overwhelming experience in my body of like goosebumps and
mm,
gratitude and understanding the miracle of life. Like, I'm so blessed to be here. I'm so blessed to be in the place that I'm in terms of my home and my partnership. And I was flooded with this sense of well being and peace, peacefulness.
I love that. And to counter that, right? Because I'm thinking, when was the last time that I felt that? So today, the day that we're recording this is actually my husband's birthday. And we're at that age where gifts are not really a thing, but I did something special and had this moment where I just looked at him in this moment where we're talking and we're sharing about I'm so grateful, right? Our relationship. And he looks at me in a way that makes me feel in awe of our friendship, of our relationship, of the blood, sweat, and tears we have come through together and the next phase in life that we're looking at to relocate out of Colorado. So before we get too deep into this, I want to caveat what we're talking about because there are people out there, Marc, that say this is woo-woo stuff. You're talking about neuroscience, you're talking about physiology, you're talking about this grandiose idea and how that ties into emotional intelligence, right? So let's connect the dots. Can you give us just
Well,
a
yeah.
real
So
quick
let me
connection?
thank you for that. And I just, anyone that's feeling skeptical and hasn't had a recent experience of awe, I just want to remind you that it's not some sort of cult that you have to belong to, or you don't have to join a club. It's your human legacy.
That's right.
And like I said, it's available to you, and there are practices which people cultivate in religious sectors or in just other disciplines, physical disciplines, where awe is becomes available to them. And we speak about them in terms of a runner's high, right? But you can also just be like totally gobsmacked at Disneyland without having to do too
Yeah.
much, but go there. Or
Me, that would be Star Wars land.
right.
Yeah.
So it's not an exclusive club. But practicing presence, being present with your experience is really helpful. And so there are ways to access that that are really helpful in terms of your daily. Like, I have a meditation practice, people who practice yoga. It opens up the senses. And
Mm,
that's the key, it appears to be. It's an embodied experience. It's not an intellectual one. The intellectual piece is like a secondary response where we start to contemplate the nature of how this magic occurred, right?
yeah.
How did we
Yeah.
get to this place where
Yeah.
we can have this feeling? And it's a gateway to perspective shifts. Like when we're in awe, we question the world, or we become curious about the world and our place in it. And it forces us to zoom out of our concerns and really recognize something larger than ourselves. And that's where it can get woo woo, because people are like, want to latch on to some explanation of what this larger thing is we're connecting with. And for
Mm,
some, it can be overwhelming. Like if you're really sensitive and you have what we'll call an apex experience, it can be intense and sometimes trigger the fear response, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a place at which awe goes a little too far,
We
right?
crest too far over. Yep.
And
Yep.
so some refer to this, especially in Christian circles, as the fear of God, right? And I don't want to base this on Christian doctrine, but it's a great metaphor in a lot of ways,
Okay.
particularly around some of the practices. But what happens is that when you have this experience, you get a new perspective, and from that, new choices become available to you. You have an idea that makes you a little curious about the way you've been operating. And then when you go through something like that, typically it's on the other side of some sort of adventure that you had to engage
Mm,
in. And as a result of that, you build resilience, you build a sense of powerfulness and the ability to survive challenging situations. Because often these awe-inspired experiences come from, climbing up a big mountain,
I was
and
gonna say cresting
right.
Mount Everest, maybe, or
Well, right.
right.
Or since we're in the Easter season, people are fasting. And so
Yes.
when you go on Friday to the mass preceding the Easter celebration, if you are practicing Christian or Catholic, you're fasting. And so when you get into this
Oh, yeah.
room with its exalted ceilings and you start to sing on an empty stomach, you're priming your neurology to
Mm,
have a different experience, an
mm,
experience that is imbued with a sense of wonder and magic about the world. Now, you don't have to be a Christian to access this. You can
mhm,
have a similar experience, but the physiological pieces are very similar, right? So
mhm.
a runner is consuming their calories and they get to a calorie deficit. A person who's a Buddhist who's fasting, or a meditator who's really calmed their mind, or if you're hiking, your physiology is changing from the point of view of the carbon in your blood, the exertion in your muscles, and that changes the way that your blood sugar is working, which is the thing that informs your neural system.
So I want to pause here because there's a lot more we can get into, but for a listener who's listening to this going, this is woo-woo stuff. Why is this important to the life that I'm living and my own emotional intelligence? Because I want to talk about if you're an individual who you don't vary your routine, you're not really into the outdoors, you're kind of disconnected from a religious perspective, why are awe moments critical to emotional intelligence, maturity, and growth?
Because is the word that I'm supposed to use. But what if we throw that word away and we just look at the shift that becomes available to you in terms of mood.
Mm,
So in a situation like you described, there's comfort and safety and routine in that routine.
mm,
And what can happen over time with that kind of routine, not always, but sometimes, is a kind of ennui, a minor depressive state.
mm,
And because life is cycles, right? We're asleep, we're awake, we're breathing in, we're breathing out, the heart's beating, the veins are pumping it back to the heart.
right, right.
Ennui or depression is just another ebb tide of your emotional intelligence. And
Mm,
so if you can find a way that works for you to create some awe or some awareness of the magic and gift and miracle of life, you can shift how you feel from a sort of routine rut into a space of value, having a valued relationship with the gift of your life. And the physiology is really important because if we're doing the same thing all the time and we're still sliding into a depressive state, then doing something different is called for. And we're resistant, or it might be too scary, or not everyone wants to climb Mount Everest or go to church or one of these things. So awe is available to you if you can just find a way for you to do the shift. And what it does to your brain is so important, and it's hormonal. I've said this before. You're changing the way the body is functioning from this Krebs cycle. If you've taken your biology, it's this idea of how we burn calories changes. So with a consistent, like, even lifestyle, not even a sedentary lifestyle, maybe you take a 30-minute walk every day, but it's not enough to kick in the awe, right? It's this
mm,
happy, healthy, maybe there's no ennui even, right? So why should you
mhm.
bother? Well,
Yeah.
maybe you've been saving your money to go to Tuscany. And when you get to Tuscany, what do you see? You see these ancient, ancient buildings and vineyards. And what do? Oh, I'm going to have this wine. And now the wine has changed something in your body, and you're feeling this sense of peace and this sense of awe. And what do? You go look at a 1,500-year-old sculpture that's in some
Mm,
winery. And now you see the brilliance of the human capacity for creativity, and you long for it yourself on some level. And it's this longing for connection combined with being met, where you're met by this awe-inspiring aspect of human. And if you're a gardener, it can be just in, oh my goodness, I can't believe my bulbs came up again this spring and I hardly had to do anything, right?
yeah,
Or,
yeah,
or there's a million trillion ways to access it, and you just
yeah.
find the one that's right for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people know I got to go to the UK through Whale, the company I'm working with, but I also spent 9 days with my stepdaughter, and that moment of awe for me was when we were in Trier, Germany, looking at a Roman gate that was built in 170 AD. To touch those stones, to stand where a Roman soldier would have been standing and see the history, and to be for a very brief moment in time a part of that history, um, makes me think of what we're talking about, right? Because it put me in that state of mind where I'm thinking about the history of the Romans. I'm thinking about how we as a human civilization have evolved and gotten to the place that we're at, and to be in a moment of the history. For me it was like, man, I'm one person in how many, millions and billions of people have been alive, and yet I'm so grateful for the life that I've had, that I have. I'm so grateful for what is ahead of me and the people in my life. And I was changed after that trip because of those pieces of awe through what I was seeing in the history that I was experiencing. And mentally and spiritually, I've evolved a little bit since that trip because of those moments.
Yeah. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be a grand figure or a
Right.
deeply
Right.
powerful religious experience. It can be simply
Little things.
a Kenny Chesney concert where he took his shirt off. It could be, a symphony, right? It could be that look in your husband's eyes, like you said earlier. And what the key thing that is, we have to prepare in the sense, and we have to cultivate ourselves and health to really access it, right? If you're sedentary and you have low circulatory system, that is going to impede the capacity of your own system to create the hormonal shift that
Mm,
inspires the brain to experience awe. And shutting down the brain's default mode network, which incidentally fuels overthinking, it can increase feelings of connection and presence. And that's when you know you've reached the shift. And it's really important to have a meaningful life. And meaning is usually a function of awe. Sometimes it's in a, like, I don't know what this means. And being in that difficult
yeah.
space is also something to be curious about.
Yeah.
And many of us assume that it requires a grand experience. But if you cultivate micro moments of wonder, it can be powerful. Watching the way the
Mm,
sun moves,
mm,
listening to the song in traffic and staying with the song as opposed to what you're going to be doing in 20 minutes when you get where you're going. It's a kind of
mm,
intentional curiosity, being willing to ask new questions about familiar things.
mm. I love that.
And then sensory immersion, really, really allowing yourself to see, hear, touch, and be
Mm.
present with nature as you experience it in the moment.
I love that. Actually, I something just popped up in my mind. My husband and I love to drink coffee outside when the weather's nice in our backyard. And we have a bird species that does this wave when he flies. So it's an up and down continuous motion. And he tweets and makes music on the downswing. And then he's silent on the upswing. And then he chirps on the downswing and he comes. And so now we recognize this bird when it comes through because it's absolutely adorable. And I don't think I would have noticed that if we'd not been present in that moment together, listening to the sounds of the morning and the creatures all around us and noticing this bright yellow bird that's doing this. You can't see me, it's an audio podcast, but to your point, it was that moment of like, that's a really neat thing to notice and to take in and be so grateful that we have these cute little creatures that are their own characters and kind of live their life very uniquely. And I think that was a sense of awe for me, just at noticing something so small like that.
Yeah, well, nature is an incredibly powerful source of awe,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
getting out in it, whatever way, like being in a national park where a glacier melt is happening and seeing this crystal blue stream and nature,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
going to the desert and just being a marvel that there's how things survive there. There's bugs in the sand and lizards crawling around and cactus manage to survive. And the ocean, the power of the ocean. Some friends of mine just got back from Tahiti, and it
Mm.
was amazing. It's like a whole different world. And you mentioned Star Wars a little bit a while. So one of the things that's true about that film, the first one especially, is that other planets were depicted by taking us to places on Earth that represent wide
That looks
array
so
of life,
yeah, yeah,
right? So
yeah,
the desert and the redwoods and the ocean and all these various places all
yeah.
present new opportunities to immerse
Mm.
ourselves in this natural beauty. And it lowers our stress, it enhances our mood, and it even improves our cognitive function. When you can relax enough that you can feel awe, it opens you up to being able to think and be inspired in new ways. That's why writers go on writers retreat into the forest, or down to the Florida Keys where there's lots of bourbon. It's step you
You
step
mentioned you don't have to get drunk to find awe. Just
but some people smoke weed, or they drink
true.
bourbon,
That's
or
true. Yeah.
and or they take psychedelic mushrooms. I'm not suggesting that any of those are good for you. I'm just saying that the humanity has
Yeah.
a history, a multiple thousand-year history
Yes.
of chasing awe. And
Yeah.
we've discovered in the modern era that if you get on your off your butt and go out there and do stuff, you can create awe without necessarily needing bourbon or any of those other substances.
Yeah.
And it's a gift. It's part of the biological gift of being in a body. We should also mention that eros is a really powerful inducer of awe, right? Being in a physically intimate situation with your partner creates access to the same
Mm.
neurochemistry that is, oh
Mm.
my goodness, I love the world, right? This is amazing, right? Um,
Yeah.
art, music,
Yeah,
literature,
yeah.
creativity. A powerful novel takes you on a journey, and you all of a sudden, when the main character is in peril and then gets out of peril, you feel awestruck, right? And you're not even thinking about the author, you're inside the story. So inspiration can be evoked through artwork, through music, through books. Big piece of it is, can I be present with my experience of it?
Hmm.
Can I
Sometimes it's
be
really
there?
hard, right? Because our minds are filled with, you and I were talking before we started this recording of there's a lot of stress in my life. And some of the things that used to help me manage those stressful times are not working. And I got to shift up and change the program a little bit. And so in those moments that could pass me by because I'm focusing on the millions of things that are swirling in my brain and grabbing my focus and attention, I can miss the awe moment that's happening right in front of me because I'm not present, because I'm so overwhelmed by my thoughts and my anxiety and my stress, right? So if you're listening to this and you're like, I need more awe in my life, I need to feel this more often, the first thing I'm going to challenge you to do is, are you letting those moments pass you by because you are so intently paying attention to the things that are stressing you out? Your job, your kids, your home life, your finances, family drama, work drama. There are so many categories that cause stress. So, my first question in those moments for myself is, can I remove the thoughts of things that are out of my control in this moment? That me sitting here and stewing and over analyzing and thinking, am I making any progress? The answer for me is always no. To mentally shift, I have to look, transformation and change happens through action. If you do not get out of your head and into a physical action, whether you're sitting in a position with, your hands and your face turned upward, if you're turning the music off, if you're closing your computer down, if you're putting your phone down, it requires physical action to spur change. And the change we're talking about is being present in the moment and being grateful for what life has to offer and allowing all of the distractions in life to fade, if even for a moment, and be grateful for the life that you're given, the planet that we live on, the part of humanity that we are a part of, and this moment that you're alive and breathing, right? Alive. We're alive, and we have to appreciate the life that we're given, even if we are bombarded, man, words today. If, even if we're bombarded by negativity, one of the episodes we recorded is gratitude, being grateful, finding moments to be grateful. And I think these parallel very, very well. Finding moments to be grateful for life, for health, for sunshine, for birds in the air, for gardens that are beautiful, and soak up that moment, even if it's for a moment. It does like you talk about, Marc. I love that you're talking about this, the physiology and the chemistry that's happening in your body, because one of the things I do a lot of talking about, you and I've talked about this, is the brain and the body are connected. And the things that you're thinking about, the things you're taking in, these moments of awe, have a physical impact on your body for the positive, for the good. And we need more of that. And we need to understand that connection better.
Even if you're in that state of overwhelm that you described, where there's a million things all piled up and you're right there, you can just take a second and go, oh my goodness, I'm so capable. Look at all this stress. And I'm in awe of myself for I'm still alive. I haven't
Yeah.
fallen down in a pile on the floor and cried my eyes out yet. Like,
I'm out of bed.
right? Th- Just you can find it in the smallest slice. And sometimes just pulling that one brick can cause a cascade of
Yeah.
relief.
Yeah.
So you don't have to take on a meditation practice like every day to find it. If you've only got little slivers that you can get at, take them. Be willing to look at the miracle of what your story is right now. Like, oh my goodness, like maybe you're in renal failure and you're like, oh wow, I'm losing a kidney.
Mm,
I'm so glad I have two. Right?
mm,
Like there's a million ways to awe.
Mm.
And if you want to up your game, if you want to really like bring forth a powerful experience where most of your life is awe-inspiring as opposed to little slivers and pockets of it, it can be really helpful to make awe a habit. And one of the ways to start that is to have a journal about moments of awe. And I'll tell you a little story. One of the things that I do on New Year's Eve, since I don't drink as much as I used to or party as much as I used to, is all year I collect little 3 by 5 card notes of experiences that I've been having with my partner. And when I've gone to even a simple thing like her niece's, launching of a product for her business or an art exhibit that is something, I write it on the 3 by 5 paper and I remind myself what were the emotions I experienced and what's one or two things that I noticed about it. Like, oh, that beautiful painting, or it was funny when so and so I hadn't seen in a long time came up and gave me a pat on the back. I fold it up and I put it in this big jar that I have. And so one of the things we look forward to every New Year's Eve is we open up this jar and we sip a little champagne, I'm not going to lie, and we reflect and we look at these 3 by 5 cards about what happened in our life, and it's a great reminder. So if you don't
Mm.
want to do that, you can start a journal and you can just like every time if you do it every day, great. If you do it once or twice a week on Sunday mornings or whatever, fine too, like whatever works for you. But writing down what your wonder log is, like what inspired you? What do you remember that
Mm.
really, like, oh, that dog came up and gave me a lick on the cheek, or, my garden's finally sprouting. I can see my cucumbers coming up. Like, just
Mm.
over time, letting your brain rewire itself to notice the appreciation and the extraordinary in the ordinary. Let me
I
say that
love
again.
that. Yeah.
Journaling helps you rewire your brain to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Mm.
And that's a beginning practice. Just doing that is a powerful way to cultivate more of it in your life.
I love that. And I'm adopting your habit because I absolutely love that idea. I'm not someone that does New Year's resolutions, but I think reviewing and I also think too, when you start to notice those moments of awe and you're kind of logging them and whatever works for you, you're going to see patterns, right? And you're going to be surprised, I think, that the more you acknowledge them, the more they happen because now you're noticing and you're aware and you're acute to the sun that is shining. I have this massive chair in my office, and both my Frenchies are snoring in the sunshine because they love sunshine. And I have these moments where I just look at them and I'm like, they're so happy. And it makes me so happy that they're happy, right? I love that. So we're obviously at time. So, Marc, what I want to do is for a listener who's listening to this going, man, I really need that. And I love your ideas. I would love to learn more from you. Marc, tell us what you're working on. Tell us how people can connect with you. Give us kind of a download of where you're at in your professional life, and if someone wants to dig in further with you, how can they do that?
Got it. Thank you. If you'd like to talk to me, you can go to markwendtcoaching.com, which is MarcWendt coaching.com. And on that website, aside from all of the website things that are supposed to capture your attention, is a little link that says book a free 60-minute call with me. It's right there. Anybody in the world who finds it can go, I want to go spend an hour with Marc. Now, typically, that's in the idea of getting coaching from me. But I live in this wonderful world of meeting people, and I'm awestruck by all the people that I meet. So if you just want to talk to me, you don't have to. I'm not gonna, I will sell you coaching if you decide you want it, but I'll just
Yeah.
have a call with you and we can connect. And you can say, hey, I heard this on the podcast. I want to talk to you about how to have more awe in my life or anything like that. And that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. If you dig, my phone number is even on there. My point is, well, what I'm doing is I'm working with this idea of improving the world. And I believe that it's essential for all of us to do the work to make an impact in things and to not just see the world as falling apart or a loss or those things. And so I'm actively coaching executives and people who want to shift the way they operate in order to create better results in their lives. And I operate from a premise, which is that what you think about, you bring about, and what you feel becomes real. And if you're passive in that, then you're going to be at the whim of the world. But if you're activated, you're going to create new results. And I love seeing people shift into new ways of creating better results in their life. And it doesn't look the same for everybody. And I don't coach people exactly the same way. It's very unique. And honestly, it's somewhat limited. I don't just take anybody. I really want to make sure that you're going to do the work and are committed. And I love that. Um, just a little bit more about me. I'm also writing a screenplay and I'm a musician. And so it's all part of an integrated life. And just yesterday, I planted some flower seeds for pollinators in my garden. And I can't wait to see the pollinators return and be able to take the nectar and the pollen from those flowers.
I love that. A little bit jealous. Here in Colorado, we have to wait till after Mother's Day because you never know if you're going to get a freeze before then. Well, I have to say, as I kind of wrap up and think through what we've talked about today, that awe isn't just an emotion. I know I talk a lot about emotions, emotional intelligence, kind of the caveat here, but it's actually awe is a transformational tool that deepens our connection with ourselves and the world. So if you can commit to seeking at least one moment of awe each day as you look towards the weekend, as you look towards next week, the challenge from this podcast is to find a single moment in each day where you can feel that sense of awe, because awe opens the door to joy, gratitude, and resilience. So keep seeking it, stay fearless, and live authentically. And we'll see you next Friday. Thanks again, Marc.
Thank you, Janelle.